So
This is it?
Are you kind of
Small talk. Let's see how it goes. Should work.
they did. And so we look for voice check.
Yeah, just talk normally.
So now we have nothing to say to each other. How's the bridge build business?
It's going. I'll say that.
Your work chart today is covered right now.
Yep.
I touched with somebody over there and I didn't realize you were in charge of which section.
Yeah. Do you need anything? I can get in touch with the right person.
If you get money, though.
Yeah, like $1.3 trillion or something.
Yeah, it roughly amounts to about 45 million a year that we think. we're gonna do. Yeah.
How many years? So I'll call the meeting to order at 6:04 PM. Murray, here. Amy Anzalone.
Here.
Dave D'Agostino.
I'm here.
Mr. Coward. Here. Harold Sands.
Here.
Jason Martin.
Here.
Catherine Patton.
Here.
John Price is Joyce.
Here.
Right? Is that
Price.
Price, okay. Somebody was on the tree side. And Mr. Restaurant.
Here without guns.
Okay. All right, move on to the approval of the minutes from June 15th, 2021. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review minutes. I apologize that I sent off a draft copy of some notes early on, so I did send them and I gave you the correct one, so people didn't look at it, you can take a look. It's the ones I sent, was just my, it was just my agenda with where I scribbled stuff on it.
Yeah,
This is the real one.
there's
These are
four.
actually-
And Luke, I owe meetings from, meeting minutes from July. We will put those at the next meeting. I have them.
Everyone reviewed? One time? So that's the motion.
Second.
Motion to approve. We got a second from Don. Yeah, roll call, please. Luke Murray. Yes. Amy Anzalone.
Yes.
Dave's not on, voting. Don Cowell.
Yes.
Harold Sands.
Yes.
Jason Martin.
Yes.
Patton.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Mr. Resto.
Yes.
Suppose I just do voice votes now. You know, I'm so used to zooming off to the roll call. Move on to chairman's report. So welcome back, everybody. It's going to look at least for a couple meetings probably until we go back. The way things go. But we're back in person, so it's good to see everyone's faces. So just to, first let me premise the chairman's report is I know that going back in person for all of us is a difficult transition, especially when we used to grab a dinner and maybe go into the room next door and being able to hop on the meeting. So give yourself some extra time, but I know the pressure's on. Everyone has a lot of obligations. For those, I have a lot of community members, the outside administration here, right? But trying to emphasize with them, don't feel pressure, right? Your volunteerism in this committee effort is valued regardless of the effort that you can put in. I mean, showing up is kind of a necessity for the majority of the time. But, I know it's difficult for people because of work burden, especially during the summer. So understood. If you can't make a meeting, just try to let me know just so I can plan on it. But it is what it is. We'll keep the ball rolling. So a lot has happened over the past couple of weeks. So I want to thank Kim Shockley, who's unfortunately not here. She's traveling from me, but she did put me in touch with the treasurer's office, and I was able to speak with the staff from Seth Magazine's office. We had a good meeting last week. Unfortunately, he could not make the 23rd on his schedule, so I requested what other dates may be available. They came back with the 31st and the 7th, both were Tuesdays. I asked Ian Dixon, thank you for Ian. She reached out to the council, and they all were available on that. They actually made it better because I know Jamie LeBlanc is going to be on the 23rd. So the new date for the joint meeting is the 31st of August. So that's our date. Along with that, we're going to be talking, upcoming meetings and also team meetings about that presentation. Logistics so far, I met with Don last week straight. And we had a really great meeting on a variety of topics. One of them is logistics for that meeting. So we're planning on some meeting over at the high school, which I heard it's confirmed, Jason. So thank you very much.
Just gotta change the date, Jen.
Yeah, the date will be the 31st. But we're gonna meet in the media center. I wanted a little bit larger venue than what's across the street. I also wanted more of a school type venue. Instead of it being a meeting, I think it was originally pitched when we were looking for votes on moving forward with a resolution. It was gonna be a presentation to council. I spoke with Ann recently and said that, I felt that this is a building committee effort, that this should be a presentation to everybody, kind of on an equal platform, to get the next phase of the process kicked off. So it's a building committee meeting that we're inviting elected officials to get the update and answer the questions that they have. So the envision of this is we're kind of, right now, is that we're going to be seated in equal positions. We can certainly sit in our respective public bodies, but I know, of course, we have 2 members from the school committee and mixed in, so we'll figure out those things. With presentation ability up front. But it's really supposed to be a collaborative environment. I want the building committee to really weigh in on their expertise, and Phil and I are going to be talking, and whoever else wants to be on the presentation committee, because right now I have 0 members responded. So we'll work that out and move forward. But I think it's going to be important to set the right tenor at this meeting, which is why I wanted Mr. Magazine to attend. I think it's important for him, and what I've asked his office to do is set the tenor of this money is out there and available. What have other communities done? Why it's important to act now. He's been a big advocate, champion of the school.
Are they gonna have a presentation? Or is he just gonna speak?
He is going to speak. He did ask if we wanted him to make a more full presentation. I said, I'm not sure yet. That's part of what we have to discuss. I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. Larger big picture stuff. I think, the important part was to really set the tone and tenor of this money's available and why we should fight act now.
Yeah, the only thing I thought that may be important is what have other communities done? Which I think may be impactful coming from him.
So maybe one of the things we could ask him to do is create a slide or slides that could go up behind him and speak to the fact that, especially I know I talked to a leader today, I guess they're going to the high schools.
He's proud.
He's proud, yeah, so he's proud of high schools.
Luke, do you think that the media center is large enough forum for?
Well, it's certainly large enough for the elected officials because we've had people there at this point. I don't expect any more than that.
Okay. So that'll be fine then. I didn't know if there'd be.
More, but being realistic.
Well, if we need to, we can move to the auditorium if we had to. If it all of a sudden exploded that room.
Yeah, we could.
One of the things you talked about, Jay, with what the media center is a horseshoe-shaped or C-shaped layout where it's more of a workshop or a discussion across the table. We thought the media center was good for that, where if we do have to pivot to auditorium, it's just not as intimate because you're going to have people that are on the stage or in the front.
I mean, trust me, it's really to come out in waves. I don't expect that for this particular meeting. It would certainly publicize it. But, if we get a couple of dozen of the outside.
Yep.
That said, it's going to be an expanded elected official meeting. It's going to be very similar to our joint meeting. Because we are going to send out invites to the legislative foundation. I think it's important for now because we're going to be asking them to pay for the House and the Senate. That's what we'll keep you.
Yeah.
Let's see, what other happenings? So you received the Teams invite, not Microsoft Teams, the Teams form. And if you haven't been in contact or others have been contacted by their respective leaders, you will. I had a great response for the finance group, which has already met once. I was in charge of that group and he's organizing it and he's having another meeting tomorrow.
Right.
We'll talk a little bit more about that, but that went out. And I'll talk a little bit more when we get to the That's it. And then I did have, like I mentioned, a quick meeting with Don. Actually, Mrs. A came in, we chatted for a bit about proceeding the process and the overviews. So the goal here, from my chairman's standpoint, is kind of getting everyone moving in the same direction. The other thing we need to do is start beefing up our ranks. That doesn't mean that, the same people are doing the same stuff all the time. So, I won't go too far into it, but we're limiting each team to one individual member. So you can't sign up for two different groups. Part of that is, if we can't find it internally, we need to go externally. We need to find people from the outside, start recruiting into the ranks from the community, beef up our numbers. Because now we need to start building a coalition. That doesn't, see people from these things outside. So to that end, I guess what I'd ask is anybody who knows anybody in town who would be interested in taking on a more proactive role in anything, you say, hey, by the way, I'm on this committee. Wouldn't it be nice if you stepped up to that? Because we need people in those ranks. Not necessarily pulling from kind of internal ranks because they have good connections to schools, but certainly around that. The delegation that you're seeing is intentional to allow the leaders to emerge. Kind of diversify our leadership ranks. So hopefully that works. But we'll see. It's a little different approach than I've seen in other communities who have failed. Communities that have failed have coalesced around a couple people, becomes their idea, and those people fail because it's their idea, not the community. And we need to make this community. Anybody have any questions, concerns, comments on that particular agenda? No? Okay, I'll move on. Project schedule. So I talked to Alita today about the project schedule. She's going to refine it with the 31st date. What we're going to do as far as the teams goes is she's going to put a bar essentially at the top of that Gantt chart for each team, just extending that out because it doesn't make any sense to have each team meeting on there. What the intent is that as we have building committee meetings, we'll report back. We'll say, hey, we had a meeting last Thursday, Wednesday, whatever. And this is what we discussed. The leader from that meeting will kind of do what they want to. We'll document that process, but we don't need to really project it out because I want the leaders. But as far as the overall project schedule, we are refining it. Now that we have some harder dates that we're in, and I actually asked her to update it, give it to me tomorrow, and then we can talk based on longer term schedule, and then kind of refine that. I think we're finally dialing. We're trying to dial in the schedule for a while now. Been like 3 months of dialing in the schedule, right, John? You're on that meeting. So,
We get a schedule. It's out there.
What's that?
One hell of a schedule.
Yeah, it's going to be the master schedule and no master schedules. It's important though because I think by the general framework we've already talked about. We want to get to a resolution vote prior to Thanksgiving. Have some time to kind of build up to the annual bond process, so that way we can get it on the ballot, and then at the same time. So. Anybody have any questions or contributions? All right. So the presentation, I'm actually looking for feedback. So I haven't kicked off the presentation with the Chairman Charlie, but Phil's going to be going over. I don't think I have it specifically broken down. Under the presentation, and actually, you had communication message, but this is more associated with the presentation, or the specific presentation that we go.
Correct, yes.
All right. So you know what? We'll wait on that until we get to that. Yep. I'm going to talk a little bit about the council. So if you don't get the basic gist, I've already talked about the tone and tenor of that meeting. Does anybody have any input as far as thoughts when we walk into this format? So what I've pitched is, maybe we have a C-type format. Don mentioned it. Presentation board up front. Everyone's kind of clustered, more collaborative environment. One thought I had was to get I know every committee member is not a present, acknowledge. Some people don't even want to touch present. So is there a way that we can engage each member without having them have to necessarily get up and engage in the audience? You know, is there a piece of the puzzle that they can contribute? And that's a floater question out there, looking for ideas. But the general gist is we want to engage the building committee in this presentation in some way. Phil has done on his own time thus far a pretty nice model that I've gotten a preview of. I don't know if you want to.
I have some pictures.
Okay, so that's great. So he'll show some pictures tonight. It's a physical model. My thought was to put it front and center. So you have the seat tables, actually have the table right in the middle of all of us as everyone's sleeping. That model sits on the stage. Again, I really want to shine a spotlight on this. Set it in the lights on.
Yeah, yeah.
Christmas lights?
Well, we can change the colors, but I mean,
I'm not joking. Whatever works.
When you talked about that C shape, if I remember, the high school has a big screen, correct? And the media center has a big screen in the room that I imagine you would set up like that, so people are looking at the screen.
Yeah, or even winged a little bit, so that we kind of have an open, a little more open concept. But yeah, so that's the. And again, this is my thought. We're a committee, so have at it. If you think that a different format works, feel free to suggest. They usually have a comment. You gotta get anything?
I'd like to say it is a pleasure and an honor to talk with you because I have a 2-year life expectancy and I'm hoping to see this building completed in that time. So we need to get some shovels in the ground. And that's based on 4 morbidity studies I've done. So where do we go from here? I'm glad to hear you've got a model because I'm on the marketing team and my first question is, where is my model? Because that needs to be in the town hall now. Or you can wait until your meeting and wow everybody, you know, which is what I want to do. I want to wow everybody with your model. In addition to the model, I want to see some charts saying this is this level, what grade it is, and this level, and this level, and this is here, and this is here, and this is here. So everybody comes over and they see it. I really think that is key to it. Another key is who's getting what? We're talking $89 million. Where is that money going? What? I'm in Western Coventry. There's 2 concepts. There's a concept of a central elementary, or you've got your 5 separate elementaries. I personally like the 5 separate elementaries. Remember, Mahatma Gandhi wanted to have village economies, and so they assassinated it, right? So that they could go to a national economy, which is screwed up. I like the one where my district school committee member represents Western Coventry, and District 2 and District 3 and so forth. They have their own school that is so important for them politically to have a base to go to use, to get things done. So doing that concept, I'd like to see a model out there, you know, a smaller model. I'd like to see every council member have a model. I'd like to see, you already heard this, right? I'd like to hear school committee members all have a model. I'd like to see them in all of the buildings so that it's the talk of the town, because this is such a wonderful design, a wonderful concept. Coventry stepping into the 22nd century of education, facility-wise. And we really need to get in there. If we're talking your meeting, and you invite all of the political people, everybody's going to want a chance to speak. And Seth is going to want a real chance to speak. He should. Because he's going to be supporting this thing. But the question is, what does Jamie's district get for this? does Kim's district get for this? Yes, we're gonna get a new middle school that's gonna solve so many issues. But besides that, what else are we getting? And we really need to have that front and center for this meeting, so every council member can go back to their district and say, this is what we're getting. But the real key is the middle school, you know, where all of our schools are feeding into. We want a desirable learning center. And I've spoken to them.
So let me translate that. So a couple things crossed my mind. You mentioned a model for everybody. I don't know if we can do that. But what if we, part of marketing campaign, this is something we talked about, if we made 3D teaching, how much would it cost to model it? Cheap, right?
Yeah, I mean, we can go over, when I show you what we got, I can tell you what.
What if we can't give a real model, what about a virtual model? What if we have flat screen TVs run the loop with whatever video that we come with? I know a lot of schools in Massachusetts, you know, like they have state groups, right, that schools districts buy into, and all they're doing now works. So they may do like a 7 to 12 model, like they get all these bonuses like we're getting. But what they do, and I got to give you an example, I think it was Franklin, they put these monitors, town hall, different places, and they ran the loop over. It showed what we got now, and then like, you know, like a magic wand. I'm not giving you justice, but then it showed these virtual 3D, like walking through, even in the schools that would be in touch, they did some of that work. So people could see it anywhere. You could get a supermarket, different places, you know. I mean, monitors aren't that expensive, but that way it addresses your point. But it's not a physical model, it's more virtual. And I think people are more comfortable with that today.
So from a digital content standpoint, we have you covered on the model. For example, one of my partners and I should tell you this, we want to be on campus at a number of the schools tomorrow to take some drone footage outside. So Jason will be from 8 to noon. We'll start at the middle school and probably go to the high school. Maybe go to the other.
Just
school.
watch out at the high school. There was some drones up in the field, so I don't want any crashing.
So my partner's a pilot, a real pilot. So we're okay with the drones. I've got some of my guys making some virtual models, and we mapped a couple pathways through the school. The pathway goes through the existing gym because we have some aesthetic improvements that we think are good for the gym. They go through the auditorium. We have some aesthetic improvements to the auditorium that we'd like to highlight. Obviously the new cafeteria, obviously the new addition, and of course on the outside. So that's in the works. The physical model, I can show you some pictures, that's in the works. I'm gonna take some drone footage. So we got you covered on that. How we use it, we can talk about that as much as you want. You can slice it and dice it anyway. Luke, I want to cut you off, but I do have one idea about the presentation. If you were finished.
Yeah, no, I'll talk about it.
So one thing, so it's not uncommon for us to have to give a lot of presentations and interviews when we're going after a project. And what has been difficult for us when we go after a project with a client that we've done a number of projects for, how do we always refresh our presentation to the same group that we've given this presentation to previously? One thing that we were successful with is introducing new people from our office to this client. But not everybody from our office likes to present or speak in front of people. So during one interview, and I'm not saying you go to this extreme, we did it as a gimmick, but it doesn't have to be. I almost did it as I was interviewing my staff in front of our client. And my staff knew the questions that I was going to ask them. It was relative to the project, but it allowed them to not speak to client, they were speaking to me, which they were more comfortable doing, about stuff that they actually knew about and could speak confidently. So the trick was for me to just craft the questions casually so that Joe could answer them. So I said, Joe, in this project, we need to do blank. What do you think is the best approach for that? And then, Ed, why do you think we need to do this part of the project? And we were successful. And that may be a strategy. If you want to engage, if the goal is for the town, if the goal is for the legislature to hear members of the committee, without feeling like they have to stand up, speak, sit down, one slide, next slide, and make it very rigid and nerve-wracking for them, you are clearly the leader of this group. So that you are not center stage, you facilitate a discussion with your key members in front of the legislature people. That may work. There's a lot of prep work for it, but not difficult prep work, just a lot. Like what question, to ask to who, etc.
I think it's, I mean, I don't know, I was doing that, I think it's an investment. Really, I think it's a brilliant idea. It's exactly what I've been looking for. And I think, well, I think, it's, let's be honest, 80 to 90% of the questions are gonna be, like, we know what they're gonna be because we've heard it a million times from our own committee. We can predict those questions. So I had to take it even a step further and suggest that we could even ask each member of the elected officials, give them a predictable question to ask. They ask it. And then the member of the committee knows the answer to that question. It may be.
Yeah, that may go a little bit towards the nerve-wracking part. The best, what I've seen over the last couple of years is your interaction with everybody here and everybody's interaction with each other. And I think that is the strongest part of the presentation, your interaction. They don't. You know what questions they'll ask, but to have them ask this question to Craig will not come across as genuine as you asking.
And they may differ. I mean, I
I got this question, but I want to ask this one.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think you way. I mean, no, I think it is. You know, I agree.
Because you could focus questions, curriculum-based, educational program-based, finance-based, facilities-based, community-based, leadership-based. I think that could work. And do what people are expecting, which is to hear other people other than me and you.
And to piggyback on that, because you got my wheels turning a little bit. So another thing that's really strong about this committee, with the members from that are residents, is so many of them have really strong background in the industry. It'd be really great to blend that in because they have industry experience, whether it's the Department of Transportation or building a school or building a house. Like there are people here that know things and can speak to topics, I think, really eloquently based on their experience. And even maybe even, use that position to advocate for this in a way of saying, like, in my experience, this is one of the best projects I've seen. Or the way this project has come together has really followed what, I consider to be an equitable, fair, but really rigorous process. You know what I mean? Like really lend voice to.
Well, and I think we want to allow them some latitude.
Yeah.
We could say that, I don't want that to be king, right?
No.
So I think
I'm
what I'll
just
say
giving
is, here's the general answer we're going for, right? Say it in your own words, and if you want to add to it, go ahead.
And we put some keywords on a slide in case they get stuck, or if there's something important that they may forget to say, but at least it's on the slide. They don't have to read the slide because they're saying the answer in their own voice. But the slide has some key points that cover that base.
John, what do you think of that? Because you were one specifically who said you weren't a presenter.
I'm not particularly good
So
at
what do you think
presenting,
about-
but if if there was, something, a guide to go by, and I had time to prepare, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all.
Especially if you're sitting down, you don't have to get up in the center of attention. That's the problem that usually gets people when you're presenting. Because everybody, but if you're sitting in place, you come into that, you will question, I think it's a lot easier to feel comfortable.
That's true, especially if you know what question is coming
And,
up.
and some of the points that you need to make, that are simple.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So, I think that's, yeah, no. Well, it unlocks, Sam, that, it gets the wheels turning.
Sure.
On the log jams on that particular item, so thank you. Just only to say, because I want to go back to the earlier points. Virtual displays, I think, is a great viable option, especially in places like town hall, the library, where we're not, quite frankly, building models. It can be labor intensive. It's also, cost-wise, to do multiple models, it's also expensive over the long term. So might be more feasible to do the virtual. And honestly, I love physical models, but you get more detail, like, virtual, you get that 3D, true kind of 3D internal perspective, and it looks real, right? So I think there's value in both, and I can use that digital content. We can use that digital content. Website, Facebook post, whatever. So.
Yeah, and when we go to the open houses, we can have if you want a physical one, you can, but you could also have a virtual one running on the booth.
I'm not kidding about the keychains. I do think that, like, I know it's a hokey idea, but like having that building on a small format to stick with them as a small little take home. Those things that seem to, hey, what's that? That's what we're marketing it, like constantly enforced. I think if we could do it in more cost economic format to do kind of what you're talking about virtual.
I like the idea. The only thing I don't want to lose sight of is something that Lee said earlier about how every school's getting something, right? So we want to make the middle school the centerpiece of our project because it is the centerpiece of what we're doing. But every school's getting something, so we don't want to lose track of that because the Western parents are getting something, and the high school people are getting something. We want to make sure somehow that's consistently communicated.
No, it's true. I mean, every
touching every school.
every kid's gonna hopefully go through the middle school, but some parents are beyond that. So, even if the child is in fifth grade, they're not gonna get touched.
If we could get a drawing from you and put it on the Coventry School website, replace that blah picture on and put your drawing of the new middle school there. So everybody going to the school website sees that. I think that would be a real positive too.
So we were talking about that. I think this meeting is going to be like the kickoff meeting. And once this kickoff meeting happens, I think all that stuff's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like if we put things out there prematurely, if people don't know what it is and don't understand exactly what it's all about, I think we could lose an opportunity. But I think once you have a meeting and you've explained it to the legislative body and the community and the town hall and everybody else, and you have it streamed out loud and you can rerun the YouTube video, then I think you can really just be all hands on deck on all of that. Because then everybody's going to know this campaign has started. What I get worried about is doing things too early and it not making sense to people because they don't know what it is.
Well, there's nothing on your school website now.
About the project?
About it, you go to the
you're
school
right.
subcommittee. There's nothing.
Right.
Nothing. So we need to do something. You should be changing that every day to get the people looking at it.
Change where?
Your website. You need something new on it.
Well, I think
When's the last time we've been on it? We have a brand new website.
Went on 2 days ago and
It has pictures on it, it has news articles on it. I mean, that thing gets updated.
no, I think you're saying.
It's up at the building committee.
Oh, so the building committee, there's nothing on it because I think we haven't had like that kickoff event. We haven't.
No, so the
Done.
hope was that the marketing team
Mhm.
would get out rather quickly. Because logo and branding are one, and then getting the website content, I think, is essential.
Agreed.
Having an initial messaging for rollout post meeting is essential. So I think to your point, I think we're shooting for the 31st of being like the next day, having content, and then building on that content over time. We just gotta get that committee together, like, super pronto. Yep. And get moving.
We want to be sure and have Kendra there.
Oh, from,
Yeah,
Science?
and she has a contact with Projo, right? So you get something in the Projo.
Is there any point in you doing Sunday when we have the carnival event going on? I would booth
Yeah,
there
again, I think we kind of agreed to
to leave it alone.
hold off. I mean, there would be value in theory, but keeping in mind, there's gonna be a lot of events to go to. The right messaging is key. Going out with the wrong message to the
Correct.
right event is not good. So, I think having everything set up, there's gonna be a ton of school. And I think, we've already talked about, it. There should be an announcement of every football game, every basketball game, every soccer game. You name it, you're gonna hear this for a couple months. Political campaigns, you don't hear much until the final month before the election. It starts really ramping up, right? All of a sudden, signs appear, everyone's like, because people don't remember anything. If you go on for 3 or 4 months, people get tired and just drown it out. So I think coming out with a hard hit with the right message, my person.
And I think it's important to continually remind everybody here that this is a pre and post resolution message. The pre-resolution now to November really has to be information based. Then town council approves going forward. Everything sort of dies down a little bit over the holidays. And right after the holidays, it's post-resolution and bond sale messaging.
But no, it's great summary.
What happens to this teacher convocation? We're going to pull back on that a little bit.
I know, it's before the 31st meeting. If you want to speak there, I think we plan on you having time to speak to them. So it's before the 31st, but it's just the teachers.
I've asked to be in on it, you're being on it. I think that's gonna be a separate presentation, because it's not gonna be quite as, be more impactful listen.
I mean, you're gonna have all the employees in the district in one room at one time. Be a good way to kind of get them up to speed and motivate them about, what.
But you made a good comment, which is what are the individual districts get for their respective, they like the districts. And although everyone goes to the high school, middle school, what may be helpful, I think, what if we had banners that actually listed out the different round and the percentage like at the top, 62 cents, allocations per school that could be static. So like, I'm almost thinking like we had 2 banners, I don't know, maybe one of them just has the amounts of it. There is something to be said for information staying static, they can walk. The presentation is great, the format, you can see a slide, you don't see a slide. If there's stuff that we want to reinforce for this whole meeting, we can use those banners elsewhere. I don't know if others have any thoughts on that.
I think the 62% reimbursement is something that needs to be pushed out there constantly. Whether it needs to be operationally defined a little more. I feel that when it's a community like Coventry, we don't even get that. That's my thinking. When people want to knock and say we can't afford it or whatever, I'm thinking that we all know, and we've had council members and people go through our buildings and see the condition. We all know that at some point, whether it's funded or not, this building is going to need to be renovated, rebuilt, and constructed. So like, to me, I know that was a big push in terms of with the mass building SBA or something, pushing the reimbursement rate. And then when people threw out, well, why don't you have a pool? Like our high school has a pool, it wasn't covered in reimbursements, but they kept going back. And people felt like we're never going to have an opportunity like this again to get this much building for this amount of money. So they kept going back to that in multiple forms. People kept asking the question, why? And that was one of the responses. Nowhere else in the community have this opportunity to get this type of reimbursement for our schools.
Coventry taxpayers are paying. So either they're going to contribute toward the reimbursement that benefits their community, or they're going to contribute toward the reimbursement that benefits another.
Correct.
Because they're paying tax.
Right.
They went through, we all pay it.
Succinct, we had a static display or displays to demonstrate, succinct information that's the most important for the project. Sounds like one is the financials, right? Tells it, I think identifying what schools and what districts they're in, so District 1, District 2, District 1, Western Poverty is gonna get $1.1 million, of which,
But could that be a detractor? Because, so Western Coventry gets 1.1 and then you added the $89 million, they're going, oh, hold on, why aren't we getting more?
But those kids are all gonna be in the middle school. They're all can't decide.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying that.
We gotta look at this as a whole, step back, because I think that was, and I know you jumped on board recently, but this building committee has gone over this for 2 years, and vetted. Somebody brought up consolidation, and we had brought it up, and nobody's saying that may not be the right direction to go, but I think through the vetting process, realizing that middle school is quite of the apple right now, because everybody's gonna go through it, so I think we have to be careful of saying just the 1.1. We have to pair it together with the middle school.
I think you make a fair point, right? Prospectively, as a voter of the town, right? I would probably say, everyone's looking at themselves, right? What is my child? But I think it's important that we put out that everyone, like we've said this before, every building is getting punched. So if we don't put that out there, it's like we're getting this big chunk of money. What they're gonna see if we're not careful is exactly what others have already pointed out in my earlier comments about making a teaching, right? All they're gonna see is the middle school. So I think putting it front and center that there's other amounts, although it'd be less, but those are smaller schools too, in fairness, and we can put it out there with the information, coupled with the information we'll put out there, I think is more of a sway to the positive than the negative, right? I don't think the conversation is gonna be about, I want more, it's gonna be about, okay, I see it's equitable down the board. Now, where it may come up a little bit is Washington Road, because they get less, but it's the newest school. So I think that's an argument that I would wage, but I think it's a fair point, but I would personally, I would err on the side of, I think it's a helpful than
And I think the dollar amount is fine, but I think even more important is what the projects are
Yeah.
and what's going to happen.
And you put 89 million on the top and then just go, okay, Washington, this is what they're getting, do.
Well, that's the way we could approach it too. When we may want to break.
But we don't need to go down this list.
Yeah, or we could chunk them together. We could just say elementary schools are getting this chunk of money, high school's getting that chunk of money, middle school this chunk of money. So it's a little bit more equitable between the high school and elementary schools. So it kind of splits the difference. It doesn't start breaking it down to such a granular level. Put the hand up over
No,
here.
that's, I'm good.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Sure? Right.
I was just wondering, this is a question for you, if we could take some pictures of the worst things about each of the elementaries and what the digital, what we think it's going to look like. So, I just bring up ceiling comments, but that's pretty cool. Take some pictures of the worst, and then say, you're gonna get brand new ones, and this is what's gonna look like. Basically, even the answers to the high school, for example. Remember seeing that sort of last thing or whatever, even if it doesn't ultimately, that isn't what happened. It gives people a big world, because just say it's window dressing, like you're gonna get, or even like at a Cleveland where they need so many clubs, okay, smaller schools, elementary being more fun. So if you could actually take a picture of a classroom and say, this is a typical classroom in your school, you have 2 clubs. How do you do or any kind of work? And so this is what we think it will look like. And that's something that your guys could probably do what we think will be the upgraded classroom, what it will look like.
Almost like you split photos.
Exactly.
Like, let's turn this into this. they have the split photo of the same room, but like it's a whole
This is what
different
it looks like.
look.
And within reason, obviously. Whatever we think, but I mean, last time on the building, that's what impressed people the most. The leaks at the high school, the ceilings falling down. And our kids actually presenting that, saying, we're gonna lose accreditation if we don't get this. And look at the gym floor, this is what it looks like, we can't be, resurface anything. So those are the key things in my mind. Like boilers, people don't, they don't go to the power room and see, oh, guess what, we have ventilation and boilers.
Kathy, have you ever been in the high school boiler room? It's so beautiful.
I've been on the room, that's what you're saying is my friends with the roof on. But I mean, I think if we could get some of that stuff, that would certainly help people get convinced in their elementary schools. What it's gonna look like.
So, I mean, maybe that's something that can be incorporated, and I mean, you don't want to get too busy, but maybe one financial one. Sometimes just a couple of images. How also, right, and that should stay.
So I'm on the sub finance committee. We had a wonderful meeting. And some very clever, intelligent ideas were presented there. One of the concerns is this is another bond in the town of Coventry. And the suggestion was made, if you had followed the town council meeting, the last town council meeting, when they talked about the review of the audit of the 2019-2020 year, it was revealed that there was a $16 million surplus, which of course nobody said anything about that night, but apparently somewhere there's a $16 million surplus. I'm sure we have squirreled it away somewhere so it's not available. But the question came up, I'm getting hit in my neighborhood by the fact that we already have a school bond and we haven't paid it off. Now, you guys know that the school bond was to fix the athletic field and some other things, which desperately needed it. One thing I don't like to do is to sit on a wooden seat that has splinters sticking up. It's not a thrilling thing to watch a ball game in that situation. So it's good, but the question is, and unfortunately, we don't have town council members here with us tonight. Can the school committee and the town council focus on getting some of these lesser bonds, the ones that are about paid off? Can we pay off a couple so that the argument of we already have a school bond is eliminated?
So first, I want to stick to the agenda item, which is presentation, right? So if you're talking about in context of should we address it in our presentation, I don't know, right? Sort it out, but the agenda items on the presentation, I just want to go to back in because I think we're going to on second balance with that.
Okay.
I think it's a fair point. Don't know if it's relevant to this particular discussion unless you're proposing that we.
You're going to get that argument. You're going to get that argument. You've got a school bond.
All right, so let's have that discussion. That's a question that may come up. Right? So in terms of this presentation, do we want to address it or do we want to stand it down?
I think it's a slippery slope because I feel that a couple of pledges, you have 4 brand new council members, right? And I think that there's a lot of education that needs to take place. We have a new finance director. I can't speak for the fountain. I think we've had very positive dialogue and the presentations and the school building committee, the participation in council, but I feel that, to me, it's that there's a lot, that's a whole separate forum in terms of if they have questions, I think addressing them. I feel it's going to take the conversation of the work that needs to be done here, and just take it off the rails. It's like, I think people need to understand what that bond was about, even the process of the bond, how the schools got pulled into some of the bond.
Yep.
And I just feel like that's going to lead down a long path in a positive conversation. That's my feeling. That's part of this process. I'm not saying it doesn't get addressed, right? Like, I think we need to strategize if that's a concern people have. then we should have a conversation solely about that. That's my thinking, but just my thinking. Others? John, do you have a thought on this? Because obviously we're here when you read the lines.
Yeah, might be a separate conversation, but we really. Quite honestly, I think the town council, for the most part, their questions are all going to be about funding.
Yeah.
It's not going to be about design or whatever. They've already seen what we think. They've already seen that presentation. We've done that to them already. So for them, it's going to be all about how much is this going to cost, what plan do we have in place, are we borrowing too much money, can we afford it?
And just to be clear, we're not going to be able to answer all those questions, right? The intent of this meeting is to compel the town to continue to work with us further. Get them up to speed, so as I said, the tone and tenor of it, and get collaboration from the process. We need our finance director, we need their finance director, we're going to present a couple options from the finance committee. And then essentially say, you know, we want to work over the next month on these options, and we want to come back to the table the subsequent month and present those options.
I think that your point, Lee, is very valid when it comes to the bond vote. I don't think it's a point we'd want to bring up with the town council for their vote, because I think they understand a little better that sometimes loans do overlap on things, and just the way you need to do business.
I think that's a fair point. Maybe not for the presentation for this agenda item, but I think we'll go through the process, keep that in your brain housing group for later, because I do think it is going to come up, and I think as far as marketing, when we get to some, you know, the next phase, we'll have to address it in some way, shape, or form, right? I think to John's point, though, it's not uncommon to float bonds in sequence, knowing that it's going to mature early. And at some point they will. That will be paid off, and they'll be one to do it for the town. They decide to discharge it. They don't get it, but that's not uncommon.
I don't want to muddy the waters
That's
with
okay.
the old bond, but I do have all the posters and everything that we did back then. And, you know, like there's a picture of Hopkins Hill and it has a window that pops out and it says, you're getting this. And so if at any point anyone wanted to just kind of refer to what we did back then, I have it, I saved it all, so.
You know, do you have any other John?
No,
I'd like to see it.
So they say it'd be good for a reference document.
I'll take some pictures and send them to you.
Yeah, okay.
Not so much to bring that. You know, we don't. We don't want to put a focus. This is about this bond, right? Not about another bond that was. Most people, quite frankly, you open that door, it's tough to shut. A lot of people weren't here when that bond was built. We have not a lot of new residents who have come in since that work was done.
No, I don't want to spread any news about that bond. I just want us to have that.
Yeah, no,
Hey, here's what we did back then and it was successful. So maybe there are some aspects of it that.
Yes, lessons learned.
Right.
That's exactly. I guess.
The only thing I was gonna add to that is I think it does make me think about really being tight on the purpose and the format of the presentation on the 31st. Like, because we could go in 10 directions if we're not really tight on what the purpose is. And if it's an informational presentation, I don't know if we're gonna have a Q&A, if you wanna do that at that point, or if it's really just about information. It doesn't really matter, but I think it's really important to think about the purpose and the format.
I think that too is it's a good comment, and I think we can address that a little bit through the agenda. We'll keep the agenda description very tight. And keep everyone, like I just did, you really have to come back. It's posted public meeting. We want to go down the road of talking about years ago. That's for another meeting. This is about Salon. I'm sure a lot of Q&A because I think even setting the tone and tenor that this is about this effort.
I agree that we don't want it to come up. We don't want to address it at the, we want to keep it off of that forum. I think we have to be prepared because what Lee brings up is that the history that kind of leads through this community and kind of sticks and stays there. I think we just need to be prepared for it and say, so here's the facts around this. And even if that facts just gets sent out and say, you know, this is what the bond was for, this is what the money was used for, this is what it accomplished. We don't say this at the meeting, but some fact sheet that's prepared and ready about that bond, and say, hey, thanks for bringing up that bond, you're right, you know, we're ready to kind of give you the lowdown on what happened and send that out to them. Only because you don't want to get stuck in it, but you also don't want to run away from it. Because it does sit in this community. There are comments that happen of the community about, was that money spent the right way? Because, you know, inaccurate information gets out about. I think having a fact sheet ready, that you don't address it that meeting, but you say, yep, we are ready for you. There's a fact sheet about it. Would be really helpful to say, we're already on top of this. We know things that went really well on this, and maybe some of the things that we didn't anticipate, but this is how those things were addressed. I think that's a responsible way to not push it under and address it in a straightforward way.
I love the one in the home. And it was that long, and they listened to a middle school. And that's the people's mind, I remember it, right? You know,
Yeah.
just before I got elected.
And the one thing I'm gonna tell you, it still comes up in the community, like we replace roofs, but they leak.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe that's not even true. And maybe that's not even true, but let's be ready for that, like, and have it. So when somebody says it, say, we're ready, yeah, thanks so much for bringing that up. You know, we have some document or whatever around summarizing that bond. We're gonna send it out to you.
So Don, that would fall more under the marketing team. And I think having talked in the past about running FAQ, I think the more that we can have baked answers for this stuff, because anybody can refer back to the link, right? Say, oh, that question, we already have an answer to it. So, and anytime they ask, it's not the Facebook response of a different response. It's, here's the link, here's the link, here's the link. I think that is, the perfect way to address this. Because I think the answer is consistent, and it's showing that we thought of this. We know it's an issue. So that would fall under the.
We just have to come up with a mechanism on how we get our answers, so that the answers are really the right answer, and not just one person's opinion of what that answer is.
Right.
So I think, you probably work with your team and select answers. You may have to go with the administration or other officials.
It's a process.
Come back to the committee. That would be part of your report back is, or the FAQ stand for the question. Yep. Yeah.
And then everybody on this committee is prepared too. That fact sheet is ready. So if you're out in the community and that you refer them to that link, whatever it is, but again, I agree with Lee that the history sits out there. If he's hearing it, Kathy's hearing it, I'm hearing it. So 3 people on this committee are hearing about what about this bond? I think that we need to be prepared for that.
But I think we also need to really focus on what this presentation is going to be at the end of the month, which is, what are we trying to do?
Yep.
And so I wonder if we should, all of us who, have a town council partner, for example, shouldn't survey them and say, what are your questions? What do you think your questions are going to be at this? What do you want to find out at this meeting? I don't want to just present the same stuff we've seen before, like the model for middle school, that this is going to happen, this is going to. We need to go beyond that, I think. But I could be wrong, maybe I feel differently. But I think we need to find out what is their primary, are they going to actually say, I don't know anything about this project? Or are they going to say, yeah, I'm pretty familiar with it, or, I don't think we need to go over every little bit of detail. They might say, and we could maybe have a series of questions that we ask every council. So like, do you know, who the people on the building committee are? Do you know how long this process has taken? When did we first start meeting? All those kind of questions. If they say, yes, I know all that, then we really maybe don't have to present that. If there's 1 or 2 that say, I do, give it to me all, then fine. But then we could actually say that and say there are some members here that are more knowledgeable about this process than others. So then we're going to spend some time during this presentation talking about 1, 2, 3. And then after that, maybe we can focus more on, I think what's going to be is the financial piece. But that's just me saying, and I guess, I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to waste our time. I don't want to, I'd be willing certainly to reach out to several councilors or whomever.
I think we better do a more organized process. So two comments on that. One is, I do think you're absolutely right. We should solicit the input and address the areas where they want to address. On the flip side of that coin is, I think it's imperative, although they want to hear it or not, everybody get a history, no matter what it's going to put in, and where we come from, how the decisions were made, right? At this meeting, I'd like to take all of that off the table with all the people. So to say, because I can tell you straight out is that since the new administration is coming across the street, there's been a feeling, I get a sense, that somehow these ideas were half-baked. We dreamed it up, we're not coordinating everything else, right? I need to put a tack in that, because that is not the truth. The truth is, we've been meeting for months, for years. This has been a coordinated effort, and we all know the road we've traveled. So we need to explain that book to get that resolved. So our forward is really looking at the financials and the grant. So, and I'll finish up in a second. So, two thoughts on this. One is we could just ask, hey, what do you want to know? Which you're right. People may come back and say, well, I might get 90% of the answer saying, I don't know what this is, how we do it. The other option is we do like a survey monkey thing, really quick, 10 questions. How do you feel your strength in this area is as far as your overall knowledge of the project? You know, knowledge of the necessity school process, understanding of the decision-making process with the school. I don't know, something along those lines. But at least a quick questionnaire to kind of gauge their level of knowledge, so we can adjust our presentation to know how much we need to do. So yeah.
I like that idea a lot of sending out a quick survey to everyone, like 5 questions that quickly vet, send out in an email, and ask them to respond back in a couple days. At least you've given them the option. They have to do something. They just can't show up here like, a bunch of ignorant fools. They got to put some work into it. The other thing is, so Mario is now the director of the school building authority. He took Christine Lopes'
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. So if you could get Mario here on that meeting, that would shut the door on any discussions about this being a half-baked approach. Because his office would have said, we reviewed the application over the last 2 years, and we absolutely agree that this is a prudent direction worth $89 million. Done. You have Seth Magaziner come in and say, we have hundreds of millions of dollars that Coventry taxpayers are giving to Westerly and Newport and all over the place. Come and get it. 62% of it we'll get back. I don't want to overly simplify this, but this is not a very complicated issue. Really. I'm just
in a normal community. Like no,
if you
simple.
Because we can paralysis by analysis here a little bit.
It's simple. We just want to make sure the basics.
So if you could get somebody from the school building authority, that this is a tough ask, Mario or Joe or Dr. DeSilva.
I've established a pretty good rapport with Mario. He's also a school committee member at Lincoln.
Yes, he is.
And so him and I have talked on the energy issues and stuff. So we have some rapport there. So I'll call him as a.
Is that something they do?
Yeah.
They would come out as a school building authority and speak like
He
that?
would do it as a favor. Yeah.
I think I'll have to put in that context. This is sort of.
They want to see Coventry be successful. And
They do.
if they feel that all I need to do is to show up at a meeting to actually just validate what they did. It's not, it's done. We've already got the letter. The MOUs
All sides.
all signed. So Mario is just there to say, yeah, good luck.
Well, and if the question does come up, then involve SBA, every time they kind of put a cap and, wait for the source, because it's not, we'll have to go back and answer.
It don't have to be.
I don't know.
So,
I think
it doesn't matter.
I think having you're right, having Seth there, and I think Mario's one trying to get into Seth will also be there. We're not gonna clog up the meeting. I think exactly what you just said. When he's there, we've committed, Coventry needs it, we know they need it. In fact, we
Agree with it.
We went out and got them more money, even when, quite honestly, everyone knows here, our percentage was low. And effectively went up because that's what supported us. So I think it's a great point to tell the tenant to kind of put it out. It's easy to say. Who are we to say, right? So take that from the source.
And if you couldn't get them here, maybe a statement. something
Yeah,
like
so
that.
I will, this week, I'll reach out to Mario, I pledge to do that, get him here as a first alternative, and second, it's a written statement saying. I could do video, go.
These are wonderful ideas. On top of this, I think we need to concentrate as well on presenting the issues that are going on in the middle school and what this new facility is going to do to resolve it. I'll give you one that I didn't know existed. My daughter teaches over there, and she says, the PA comes on, announcement, and I can't hear it because the fans are so loud out in the hallway trying to dry it. So what did I miss? And so what are the other issues? The lunchroom. That is a horror show. And your presentation showed a beautiful lunchroom. And that, some of these things that we really need to show these things to say, this is going to solve these existing issues. These issues are here right now. And really, if we have some of those issues in the elementary schools, in the high school, I know that Ann is really big on STEM in the high school. So if we can highlight these things and say, it's going to solve this, it's going to solve that, you're going to get more teacher support, you're going to get more town support, and it'll be a better presentation.
Do you expect Joe Lucian to be in this presentation? So to his point, you could engage with Joe in a very high level, some questions about the impact of this project.
That's a good way to do it.
And I already emailed Joe, I don't know if I copied you on it, about would he be willing to be on the presentation committee? Not necessarily to present, but his voice on that committee is crucial because he knows that school. Probably Jason's probably the only person that can pick up that part of the school better. So he needs to have a voice on that committee, or maybe in that Q&A type interview format, where you can get that. And Jason, I think, would be the other person that you can follow that conversation.
The middle schools were good.
Jason could speak to
I
some of the
think with
elementary
this
schools.
meeting, that's a great format. I don't want to go too much, although I of course, hey, look at the video testimonials from teachers, what the worst scenario, right? Oh, well, when I teach, I can't hear my class because I hear the fans and all trying out the polls, so I don't get pulled on. That's a great snippet right in front of the video, then we have the next one. But that, I think, is future marketing. I think for this, we gotta keep it back more brief, and the fact is, I think it's survey as well.
Can I go back to the survey for 1 second? For the town council.
Yes.
Are we looking for specific short answer responses on questions? Or are we looking for more of a Likert scale kind of gauge of what you know about something?
Very knowledgeable,
Right.
neutral,
Yeah.
not,
Yeah, okay.
but don't know what you're talking about.
So, because we can frame some questions, but it's good to know what you're looking for out of the question. Are you looking for a response or a Likert scale kind of response? I think that's.
I think what the goal getting out of this is if we have a fair amount, a high percent, strong in a certain area, we'll back off, we'll
Yeah,
have our presentation, right? We'll touch it, and we'll broad brush it a little bit more.
I'll
To
draft
focus
that.
on those areas that we know are pain points, right?
I'll draft that and share it with a few people just to get some input.
Yeah, I would ask it, yeah, that would be great, and then sooner than later, because I need to send out the invites. Now we have a solidified date, I'd like to send out the invites.
Put it right on
Put the survey with the invite.
Right, and that would be the goal, a brief invite with the survey attached, they get on the end of the week, and you just fill out the attached survey. I'm glad the date was later, not earlier. Sure, it's like already 10 days in the. I feel like- I don't know how other people feel, but I feel like the summer is going very fast.
I just wanted to bring one quick thing up for you, Lee, and that is, when I first heard Seth's presentation, he justified the borrowing of the money for the bond because other bonds were coming off. It was the amount that the state could actually borrow. And that's where that number came from. It just wasn't pie in the sky like, oh, let's borrow, you know, 500 million, whatever it was. It was based on bonds coming off. So at least, you know, that sort of kind of lays the groundwork. If he talks about that, then you can ask him about that in a little bit. I'm sure that's part of the presentation.
This presentation at Newport was very impactful and would expect it to be here as well. So,
No, all good stuff. And I think we've got some great ideas for the presentation. We need to move on. So, last stabs at presentation. This was the presentation topic. I think we've got some outstanding ideas. We got virtual models. We've got canned answers for the speaking and the Q&A feedback, which is going to be a great participation item. I think if we have a survey of the council, so we can start focusing the presentation to the strong points, one weak point. We talked about maybe some balance and fix elements that stay during the presentation. It sounds like no one had any objections to the C-type format, kind of like the laying it out in that format. As far as space goes, we'll monitor if we need to shift, we will. Of course, with COVID, I'm really hoping we can stay in person. The whole thing changes when we go virtual, which is unfortunate, but if we have to go that way, then we will. But my hope is we might be doing it with masks. Anybody else have anything before we move on? All right, I think we burnt that one out. Moving on to 6, breakout teams, update discussion assignments. So this would be the time for other teams to weigh in. Presentation team, I'll just tell you, it started. Actually, part of tonight was getting me going because they don't have a team here. I think there's a lot to go on here and we'll build that. Don, you want to get an update on where you are just generally?
Yeah, so I met with Luke last week just to talk about composition of my team and found out not a lot of people volunteered. Least tonight say marketing, but also at least tonight say finance. So I have to figure out where Lee's sitting. And I know Dr. Dixon had reached out to me also, and I think she's sitting in 2 different places.
Yeah, I really, we discussed this. I really want to have one member per team. We need to draw in those outside people. I'm not going to do it the same people constantly. I appreciate the willingness to do the work. Unfortunately, we're the same here. You tend to get the same people doing the same thing or do more work. And I think it's a great opportunity to bring more people into our circle. Not only do that if those spots are available, it's harder road. It's easy to cherry pick people who are just always like, hey, I'll do it. Also dilutes their time. Like a marketing effort's a big effort. They can't be diluted their time going to finance and being an elected official and doing what you know. They need to focus on one fast. So kind of made that. I put that out. This is what I said.
Question that went to the Harold. How many more meetings do you think you're going to need to find? Is this going to be something that's going to follow up the whole project? Doing the meet right now, and that maybe it would trigger something.
I think the plan from the finance was that was the initial area that we needed to concentrate on.
Yep.
And then, so we did 3 scenarios last week. This week we've cut it down a little bit. We're going to concentrate on those and then have a final 1-2 punch at the end for the presentation. So I'm looking at 3 weeks, possibly 4, but really 3 weeks is, and make sure that we have Steve Massaroni in here to look at, make sure that they're both viable plans going forward. That's it. then we're done.
So if there's human, which I expected, right, I put a whole timeline.
Yeah.
If that room extinguished, if those people want to move over into another group, although I'm still reserving one other team that I haven't put out. So that team may be an option, or I know that I want to identify by that point should get a good sense of who's struggling. Like, you know, if we don't have enough members, like the logistics team, I know is going to take a lot of effort.
I have 8 members on this.
So you do.
I do.
Wow.
Wow.
I do. So
Oh,
it's
that's
gonna take a lot of effort. I got a lot of people.
So we will, you know, we'll fit in people, but again, it's okay to sit back. So, you know, if you dedicated time, you've done the time right for weeks, the intent is not to burn people out. The intent is to pull people in the mix, develop leadership in the ranks. So, you know, it's okay to, you're elected, if you get all the things.
I'm not saying,
You know, so if the answer is, hey, you've done your duty, move on, don't worry, you know, this is only for this phase, there's gonna be other tasks. Post-revolution, you know, rebond. So, sorry, Don, did you have anything?
I just reached out to a few other people. One example I was giving was Kristen Bagley, who I know Phil knows from Providence, has joined our administration team with Western Coventry, and she has a background in PR marketing.
She's a resident.
And she's a resident. So I already emailed her. She can't be here tonight. She's meeting with parents PTO meeting at Western, but she said she'd be more than happy to join in on that effort. And then I also emailed the teacher who runs the marketing program at the high school to see if I could hook her in and then maybe her students in and get them involved. So Kristen Violet is on my email. I just gotta wait for her response.
So do me a favor, this will be like, update, you have the link that I sent out?
Yeah, I just
Just if you could just, once you get those people signed up, put them on the list and then, you know, give us a sense of. Just increasing. Really, the team leadership, we're trying to have a very hands-off approach. Run your meetings, you do your stuff, come back to the committee, just keep me in IS and keep me with, just so there's one point of like sort of constant contact. So people ask, I'm not gonna know, but not my job. This is it.
Yeah, so I actually have, every one of the elementary principals, there's 4 of them, Sarah Bodkin being the assistant, who want to be a part of that committee because they feel like their ability to be able to kind of know what kind of events are happening within their areas is key. So I have 4 elementary principals that have joined. I also have a community member who is a husband and wife team that will join that runs pretty big events and know everybody in town. I had them join. They have a student that's in the high school, and they have 2 other ones that went through the school. But everybody who's from Coventry knows their calls. So yeah, so Mike runs the grade in school. So, and then I have a family that has 0 children in the school department any longer, that will contribute to helping us, how do we get this message out? It's important for us to do this. And the final one is I needed a family that had like younger kids that aren't in school yet. So I was able to work with a neighbor who has that 3 of them join the committee and kind of help us how to get it out to like some of the others, like in the daycares and things like that. So
I have one addition for you.
Okay.
You guys said today that she'd like the other.
Okay. Let's see.
And that,
How many you got, John? I'm just gonna say.
Is it a competition?
I'm just
so I got one more issue. So Christine, it's gonna be on
Christine
you.
Kennedy, right?
She wanted to be marketed. Alita could have gone either way, but I think she's very good to sit on task and
Yeah.
I think she'll help you with that.
Right.
So she'll be on, so you can reach out to her when you get recommendations. So there's some additional assignments. And I think, the other challenge I have is businesses. You have one member that you can use. Which, you know, I know the law is going to involve. I don't care if you want to pay. It'd be really nice to have a business person.
Chamber of Commerce here?
We used to, I don't know if, I think it's going out, I think we fall in the central chamber. So we could probably get, one of the, people from 5.5, John Brenty or Chris, all yeah, it's always supportive, they're very, you know, other places, up there. Yeah. It'd be great to have somebody who's, their business, they may not be supportive, I don't know, but, you know, we can find somebody who is, and so, we've talked about it in the past, now's the time to find it. Anything else on that teams? So you guys are gonna be reaching out to the individual members soon on dates, and, obviously, we're still keeping the building. So, you know, whatever your team decides. I think, how you're doing Wednesdays?
Wednesdays, yeah.
So,
Wednesdays at 5.
you know, that is really, you know, just as far as space allocations.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, concerns, comments, Graves?
Am I off the marketing team?
Yes, well, are you on the finance team?
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, right now you are. Once the finance effort's done, then you're more welcome to join it. It's not to kick you off, but, you know, as you've heard, we have other members. Yeah. I appreciate the willingness to step up. But again, I don't want the same people, you know.
Answering the question.
As you heard. we have
I'm
very-
retired. I've got time. There's other people on this committee that are, you know, I mean, keep working on the bridges, John. You know, keep working on the schools.
It doesn't preclude you, by the way, from coming up with ideas and transmitting those ideas.
I want to see these marketing people. I'd like to be there just to see the marketing people in action.
Well, you know. Yeah, I was gonna say, if you want to be a fly on the wall, but I would ask that, you know, if you really want to keep.
Yeah.
That you'd like to see. Anyone, listen, you're on the larger committee, you're always gonna, you already have your voice heard, right? The marketing team's coming back. And soliciting more ideas and getting approvals and whatnot. So you're still gonna be involved.
I do want to say that I'm really pleased that Amy's got the principals involved because they need to be. They need to know what they're getting. We have council members who are saying, what is in it for my district? Because they have websites and they're communicating, they're getting the feedback from those websites. You know, what is in it for us? Why should we be interested in it? And it's our job to get that information to them, to tell their voters why they want to vote for this.
I agree. It's all the more reason that we want to have teams.
Teams.
Because I think it's important that, you know, they have those perspectives. Want to make slots. Which you know, I guess going before we move up this topic, I know I originally said like 4 to 6 people. What do you think you're going to top out these groups? You're going to be so not 9. So
Like 10 if I
that's a lot
consider
of people to
business.
manage.
Yeah, but I think what you're gonna see happen is that they're not all gonna come to every one of the.
We're going to share information. Hopefully.
Yeah.
And I go back to, and I'll also bring this up, is I also have to be careful on the building committee members on different issues, because it causes Form A issues. I want these to have to be, you know, create another layer. The intent is to pull in outside perspectives, non-elected officials, non-committee members.
Right now, my number looks like it's 8. For the old people. How many did you say that?
And
Did you say 9?
Yes, you said that.
I have 10. You know, I just texted my daughter.
She's on.
You're in. Ready? What you doing?
Be careful what you wish for now, I know. It's driving me crazy, it's making me without further ado, I'll move on because time is moving along pretty quickly here, and I don't want to take it past it. So, Phil, you're on the,
Yeah, I have something, this turns out all the slides, but, we don't do that.
Okay, yeah, me. Phil, do you need someone to hit the button so you can talk to the slides, or do you leave on?
I can talk from here if that's all right. Everybody can hear me all right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know where you can use this presentation yet, but I at least created some more content that was different from the last time we met, because I believe we're still looking for a standard presentation about 10 minutes that you may want to give at the open houses this year. So what information is being shared? I'm calling it right now the Coventry Public Schools Educational Facility 5-Year Capital Improvement Plan. Maybe that's the title, maybe it's not, but we can talk about that some more. I think it would have to be a brief agenda. You would want to communicate to this group that this 5-year capital plan was is going to be presented in 3 parts: the determination of the needs, the plan and solutions, and then proposed costs and schedule. The determination of the needs was done through a parallel approach, one that included a facility assessment and then a community forum. It was determined that there's over $50 million in district-wide facility needs over the next 10 years, and that does not include what we heard at the community forum, which are those student-focused needs. It focused mostly on those things, keeping students and staff warm, safe, and dry. But we heard at these community forums that the 2 highest ranking guiding principles within Coventry were schools that were warm, safe, and inviting, but also ones that were future ready. The project strategy going forward in the 5-year capital plan are projects that will keep students and staff warm, safe, and dry, and projects that are student focused. So plan and solutions, the approach is a 5-year capital plan that has immediate and impactful action that will be foundational to a long-term strategy, which is a 10 to 20-year plan for Coventry. That long-term strategy is a commitment to all students. It's a responsible approach, and it needs to consider both the current condition and future opportunities of the school facilities. The 5-year capital plan, developed through a collaborative process, resulted in minor, moderate, or major projects that impact all of Coventry schools. And then we call that being innovative, but also responsible. So the scope of work at Black Rock, Hopkins Hill, and Tyoke includes interior finishes, select mechanical, electrical, and plumbing improvements, site improvements, and ADA accessibility. The scope of work at Washington Oak, interior finishes, site improvements, and accessibility. Western Coventry, finishes, mechanical, electrical, plumbing improvements, site improvements, ADA improvements, building envelope improvements. Coventry High School, replacing the gymnasium flooring and bleachers, science and classroom laboratory upgrades, mechanical, electrical, plumbing projects, site improvements, and ADA improvements. And finally, the largest scope of work at the middle school, demolishing the 6th and 8th grade wings, constructing a new 3-story academic wing and cafeteria with kitchen, a new synthetic multi-use athletic field, site work, renovate all the classrooms in the building, replace the HVAC system in its entirety, as well as the interior finishes. The proposed costs for these projects range between $400,000 at Washington Oak to an $80 million investment at the middle school. And lastly, regarding schedule, we received RIDE approval in June of 2021. We anticipate town approval in November of 2021, with a bond vote in the spring of 2022. And if voter approved, construction between the summer of 2022 through the summer of 2025. Please visit CoventrySchools.net School Building Committee for additional information. Now, again, we can go through these presentations more and more, but I want you to just see the type of content, and you should discuss. Too brief, not enough, just right. If you were a parent going to an open house, do you feel like you heard enough, etc. So we can talk about that. And then lastly, this was about a week or so ago, but I'll show you a picture of the model. So how we did this is, so this is wood. It's about 3 feet by 4 feet. And it was laser etched and laser cut. And each one of these is a contour line. So right now it's all stacked flat like this in this picture. But we have subsequently built up each one of these. So it's a contour to it along these lines. This was, like I said, laser etched into it. It doesn't look as good in this image right now as it does. This is a plastic printed 3D model. From here to here, from this point to that point, it's about 9 inches. We have houses over here that are painted like a brownish color to blend with the wood. And then we have trees everywhere already. So that is starting to come together. And we have a nice frame around it. So we probably need about another week or so on the model, and then we'll transfer it to you. I can tell you, you won't be moving this around too much. It's like 3 by 4. So when, somebody needs to have a truck to move this thing around, and then, 2 guys to carry it. But why we like the scale of this model is, so imagine this model sitting on the table. One of the images that we'll have tomorrow, we'll take with the drone, is the existing. So what we want is, when this model is sitting here on an easel, is a nice big aerial view of what's there now. So someone could see, oh, I could see where this is all happening. I could see how this is going to become the main entrance to the school. And let me tell you, when you see all of this populated with green, you quickly realize that there's an opportunity for something significant here, because the model continues farther past this picture. And this whole idea that you mentioned earlier, this consolidation, that is something that is on the horizon, but not now. But you're certainly setting yourself up for the next 10 to 20 years with this particular site. So, in terms of cost, what this was for us, like having this printed was only a couple $100 at this size. So you want to get these things pretty small, you can do that. Pretty tiny, not a major cost. So that's where we're at with that. So I'm anxious to hear what you think about the presentation content, and I'm happy to share that when it's done in a week or so.
So, let's put it up to the committee, and it's, actually, I'll kind of do what I've done on video, is I'll kind of do run moments. Kathy?
I'm good. I think it's just on everything that needs to be done. Whether or not it's enough to fix this one, I'm sure. But as far as just for open house, I think it's really good. So, good presentation. I'm not there.
Lee?
I'm assuming that Jason had a lot of input on this. And I'd like to think that all of the elementary school principals are satisfied with the dollar amount they received to solve their greatest issues. And if that's the case, you've done a beautiful job with the presentation.
John?
I liked it. I think one possible way, I know a lot of people are visual learners, so when you show those middle school pictures, sometimes they don't understand what finishes you're talking about. So if you have any pictures of schools on, this is a picture of Washington Oak, what would the finishes you're putting up be like on?
Yeah, what you mentioned earlier may be an opportunity to.
I think that's a
incorporate
good
that
opportunity
in.
to incorporate that in on that slide. Or some picture of the old middle school and proposed new middle school, if you have those electronic.
Yes.
So I was very involved in that, and my electricians and everyone, they were all in the room when we came up with it. So I feel very comfortable with it. I liked that it was short, sweet, and you kept hearing that it was centered around keeping us safe, dry, and there was, almost every slide mentioned, student focus. I think that is exactly brief enough that we get the information out there. I really liked it.
I thought it was on point. I do have a worry from the financing side. Does it have to be 5 years? Does it have to be on that schedule? Is it something that we can work with later down the road once we figured out the financing?
Well, the 5 years is just the capital plan, it's not. So RIDE restricts us to saying that we should go 5 years out. That's part of our assessment school nutrition, so it has nothing to do with the finance.
No, but I'm talking about the 22nd, 22 to 25. Is that pretty much
for
it?
construction?
Yeah,
period?
yeah.
That's what we projected based on that schedule, so.
So there are some incentives. So if you want that 62%, there better be a shovel in the ground of the middle school before December 30th of 2022. Construction needs to start at that middle school because that's where you want the full 62% of.
No, that's
$80 million.
that's what I'm getting at is the 62% because it's the housing aid that we're looking at, because the housing aid, when it's used in a bond situation, you want that housing aid coming in right away. So the quicker you can get from shovel to building, the faster you'll get your housing aid. And that's sort of what I want to discuss later down the road, but something that I want to, I thought your presentation was.
You want to expedite it.
So one thing I was playing around with is I think that the middle school would be accepting students in the September of 2024, which is the
That's
2024,
okay.
2025 school year. That would mean that you have, that's a very aggressive schedule, but
Very aggressive.
it is, but I bet if Christine or a leader were here, they would say it's aggressive,
Let's do it.
but doable. I mean, East Providence rolled pretty quick, and that would be the goal.
I'll tell you what, because you have to finish July 15th to get the housing aid for that year. If you don't finish July 15th, you have to wait a full year to go forward to get the housing aid. So it's something to think about, and it's timing as far as from the financing standpoint that you really need to understand. If we could work together on that in the presentation and sort of bring that down, 2024 would be amazing, but.
I think so here's what I'll say. First off, like for this presentation, I think our numbers are fine. Out here, under promise, over deliver is always the motto, right? So it is an aggressive timeline. Given all the hurdles we've seen so far, I just don't want to. I think the granular conversations we'll have in the background.
Yeah.
Are getting more suited to that. We've already started to have even the leadership meeting before we came on board. We did have some of those general conversations talking about bands and how. I think it's a different conversation in this presentation.
Oh, correct.
So this is the way. This is
It's
beyond.
the high,
30,000.
yeah. No, I thought it was on point. I thought it was perfect.
But I give points to.
The 2022 to 2025 is to get the first, second, and third grade parents to figure out that that school will be their child's middle school. I mean, that's that any first, second, or third grade parent, those are the ones that you want. Yes, votes.
Yeah,
There's absolutely no reason, because the elementary schools all need work, but elementary schools are mostly driven by the principals and the teachers and the kids. And the facility is not that big of a deal, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen at the elementary school level. They need to be warm, safe, and dry, obviously. It's the middle school where kids start to lose interest. The school's not interested in me. They don't care because I got a crappy school. I don't care about school. I'm going through puberty. You take a first, second, or third grader that's going through a not so nice elementary school facility and show them that when they go to middle school, they're going to be the first class through here. That's the message that you want to get to those parents.
Did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think it was a really good presentation. I think it had the right amount of information, not too deep, and I think the model is going to be great. I think people really want to be able to see something.
Especially if it has lights.
Oh, so let me tell you what we're trying to do with the light. I don't want you to look, this is 1 inch equals 60 feet. So this is not, what we're doing is this, and that, we have, they'll be able to glow. So you can know which ones are the new additions. So they'll have a glow to them because this is hollow underneath. It's plastic.
And in 2025, when the kids are moving in there and the parents say it's not glowing like the model did, you told us it was going to glow.
See, I don't know if you can see it. The whole idea of keeping this, like these baseball fields are not yours.
Right.
But this synthetic field would be. So the whole idea, and by showing some of the houses, people get a subconscious feeling like this is my community. Oh, that's my house. I mean, we're trying to be accurate where we're putting these things. So people who live along these roads see this as okay, these guys got their act together. They've got a whole plan. I could see this as a great community asset. My house value is going to increase. And leading to this, how we parted it, how we said it during that master plan. Based on the existing facility conditions and the future opportunities of those facilities. Hopefully that's triggered messages with them that they understand. Maybe some of those elementary schools could be consolidated here and create this campus. Not to overly simplify it again, but.
Right.
Yeah. Presentation's on point, it's tight, it hits the points that you want to hit. Any one of us can give that presentation, I think, pretty comfortably, so I think that's great. I think the visuals are important. If we could throw some visuals in there at some places, I think it would keep people keyed in.
Yep.
I like the model a lot, and I think that this effort, this informational portion of this whatever you want to call it, the information portion of it, I think this is great. If we get town approval and we get to the next part of that, I would want to do a school model that's just a big school model. And that's probably something you would do anyways, but I think this is good for this. But if we get to the next hurdle, let's see it and make it just a big school. Doesn't have to light up.
People walking around.
This is eighth grade grade, this is
Right, right.
seventh grade grade.
I agree with everything that you said. I think, for me, the point to highlight is that whole future ready. Some of the things you hear, some new ideas I hear here in Coventry about how much money is invested in the past and now look at the buildings, and I feel that, highlighting, and I don't know if you would hear, the future ready part, I think we do, in terms of, how this meets the needs of not only this generation, but generations to come. Then I feel that the part about maintenance too, having a new building and being able to invest in somewhere we have to, because those are things that I do too, that maybe about maintaining the building. So, how do we address that? Or maybe that's in the after time. That's a question about. We've seen this a lot, but I feel that this is really a nice streamline. And last thing I say, the vision is too. I think it's important.
Yeah, I thought it was enough info, really concise and very focused. Add one thing that I'm gonna really tap into that. I would love to see it open with before the actual presentation, like a very mini little video that gets people excited, like to start. It's just an idea where, something that gets people thinking about these at open houses. Like, kind of, do you know what's been going on? And bam, some pictures that show where it could be. Because I think we don't have, and then those can continue to play in screens and things and around wherever we go. And the reason why I say that is I'm concerned that one, people aren't going to be able to picture this. This is just info, right? And some people are visual. But I also think that elementary parents probably, I totally agree with you, don't know that at times their buildings aren't warm, safe, or dry. And so I think that, like, one of your very first slides said, this is what people wanted in these forums. Well, I'm not sure. I think it does revolve in elementary school around the teachers, the principals, the families, the students, not necessarily like, what is the building like? And when they come in, their eyes are wide open because they want to get to see their teacher or the classroom or whatever, and they don't pay attention. One day Luke walked with me, and it was when the building had no life in it. And he was like, gosh, I never realized how much work really needs to be done in the schools. And I thought, you never realized it, your kid's been here for 6 years, but and it's because you don't pay attention to those things. And little kids don't go home and say those things either. Bigger kids might go home and say, there was water points and stuff, but little kids don't say anything about that. And they think it's a field trip if they have to move out of their room because it was cold that day. They don't think it's anything big. It was a fun day. How was your day? It was great. They don't say why. So I feel like we have to paint the picture, not that it's really not safe in our schools. I don't want to say that, scare them, but they deserve to have more than what we have in our schools right now. And so maybe the visual comes at the beginning. This is what it is. It's what we want. And then that information that really kind of hones in, which is really concise, not too much, but just enough. So just my thoughts on that. Maybe it's at the end, maybe it's at the beginning, I just trust an idea.
When you were doing the mock-ups, you were showing us all the different, beta versions of the project. And you did the videos where you came in and you went around.
Yeah.
Those were exciting.
Yeah, so we got that. We got that covered.
Those are
for
exciting.
school.
I think that gets people's juices flowing.
Yeah, and that's fine. We
Star
got
Wars theme too.
Pixar Studios now.
And I think in that video, you have to say, if you have a kinder, first, second, or third grade, you're gonna be the first ones in here. It needs to say that
Yeah.
in those videos.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Exactly what you said, it needs to say that, because then they're gonna, my kid.
But only put that in the elementary video, because you don't wanna, you're not gonna get any of the high school kids to come out and go.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, I put it right in there. So,
Good comments. Good comments all around. I like the model. My only suggestion on the model may be kind of like what we did with the drawings. Can we get that dotted line of future roadway kind of future, like, you know, we're talking about future ready. This design is future ready. Can we identify it? You may already be doing it, but identify what those future ready spaces we're talking about the paper. This space is future ready. This space is, this roadway is future ready. Because I think it's important to complete that vision for them. So when we're having those discussions, it's, if we wanted to, yeah, because one of the things that's going to come up is why is the building flipped? I know it's going to come up. Well, now you're accessing the backside of the building. Why? That roadway is a big piece of the puzzle. It may be something that, quite frankly, we may endeavor to do as part of this phase if there's enough, you know, sort of thought behind that. Like, to say, you know, if you want to go down that road to get to the building. It required additional work. We didn't want to kind of get into that at this phase. I think it's important to kind of show that. As far as the presentation goes, I like the gravity. I agree with everyone. Visuals. Visuals are impactful. I think what I was going to say when you tackled it, it's mental. Like, what are you trying to get out of it? If I can get parents inspired, interested out of this presentation, it's done its job. I don't need to tell them all the details on the project. It's out there. Get a little bit of inspiration in them. Say, hey, my kids did it. And if you really think you want to look up on the internet and stuff, you can mention. Because I agree. I think the brevity is great because I sat through these that we drive. Right? You know, oh, your kid. No, they're inspirational though. You know, like principals are excited, everyone's excited, like parents get whipped up, kids going back to school. You have so much time, you won't know what to do with, and now your kids back at school. But it's meant to be exciting because, you know, it can be very important, right? And I think showing, to your point, pictures of what could be. So not necessarily what it is, because I know what a broken ceiling is. Okay. But looking at the, what's the school grants?
Eden Park.
Eden Park. Showing one of those classrooms and saying, this is what we want. Right? Would you like something like this, please? Would you like something like this in the middle school? Because honestly, I don't think people really know what the alternative is. Like, when I went in as a parent, I went to that, well, I didn't go to the same stuff, like block art and arcade. It's another fun, right? Block walls. And the teachers really make this space, right? They put a lot of things on, they put murals on the walls, and they make the space. But, you know, but when you see what the alternative is, everything's bright, a lot of furniture, the space just feels good. And you're like, oh, wow, that's really what I want. It's like me, I work in municipal offices, I'm used to being just really open, right? Then you walk into a private office, like I walk into Studio J, and I'm like, man, I guess I'm back to
and open houses are these single-phased events in the elementary school from the fall all the way to spring. So you will not have more elementary parents in the school. So it is the single-phased event.
And I'll ask kind of this. Although we're trying to get a common presentation for before we do that, but I do think we're going to, like, you go over all the school improvements. And I think what we want to do, is focus on gaps.
So if I would agree with that. If we introduce the graphics part, then I would probably say when you're at Black Rock, you're just talking about Black Rock, but you got to touch on the middle school too.
I think the middle school is important.
And the high school too, right? At least.
Yeah, you don't have to talk as much about
Other elementary schools. Okay.
Wait a little bit more time on it because what's in it for me? What's in it for me as an elementary school parent is high school. The next phase is my child's education. And the middle school presentation, it's about middle school, high school. Not even so much about the middle school because they're going to high school.
Yeah.
For the high school is the most difficult one, but they know the problems, right? So you can say, hey, you see our labs, those labs will be transformed into this, right? Built-ins in science labs, now becomes this flexible STEM lab. You know, they can see the vision, now they may not yet. But the parents are really going for the parents, and honestly, those parents. Yeah, the freshmen one.
Yeah.
The engagement of the high school on the parent level, I'm guessing it's small.
You get more when people volunteer to shoot for high school.
So to that point, you know, freshmen. Yeah, so because actually, we might even have sophomores get back depending on the schedule on a building. We're talking about being pretty aggressive. Phases, which is like, I know that's a lot, but
Yeah, no, I got you.
so visuals, focusing a little bit more, future ready. Anybody else? Any last minute comment, last thoughts?
Cost savings. The new middle school
That was
cost
the last thing.
savings.
We didn't mention one thing about the 62%, which we don't have to say much, but I think at one of these slides, we should say is, we get six, by the way, we get 60% on the dollar from the state on this. 6.8. So I think it can be simple, round it up, whatever. But I do think we should say it, right?
Oh, absolutely,
We want to get away.
especially on that last slide.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, out of all this great stuff, the end is going to be, parents going to be like, great, I want that. Who's going to fund it? Not as much as you think.
There was something said about the new middle school would save more in energy cost.
Oh, absolutely. Air conditioning and bigger will
So-
save
so
more money
is
than
there
what you're
some-
spending now.
Is there some kind of percentile figure we could put in there? We estimate this much, reduction in energy cost?
Yeah, I mean, we may have done some loose analysis already as part of the stage
Yeah,
too.
but
So
to present it, because energy is a big thing.
We could broad brush,
operational savings and the money can
Yeah.
be reinvested back into the school.
Back in
I
the,
have a slide that I use on some other things that talk like that. So yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, we can try that. Maybe that works into the 62.8%, kind of like a, value added proposition slide thing.
Yeah, you can,
like,
yeah, that's a good idea. Sort of one financial stuff.
Yeah. Without getting it too complicated.
I do think we want to give people time for that 62% number. It's a good opportunity to move that one.
Now, you're absolutely sure of that.
62.8?
2.8?
That's a commitment in the letter.
Oh, it's in the letter?
Yeah.
Oh, all right, yeah, all right, good.
And MOUs.
We just have to make sure we hit those dates.
Well, then we hit those dates. Yeah.
I will say this, in all fairness, there is a caveat, as you know, like, the commitment, true commitment doesn't come till the end.
So after,
So we've gotten as much assertion as we can. And
yeah,
the money's available. So I mean, I don't think we're not saying anything not true, that's the kind of rule we know.
Yeah, they make the assessment at the end.
Mhm.
I mean, so everything that you put into the architectural program, as long as you hit those 4 categories, you're good.
But they've demonstrated that they're supportive of the college. They recognize the amount of money that's been left on the table. And I don't have the historical, but they do, in terms of opportunities that Coventry has had. They really, bottom line is, I believe they're best in this succeed. Whatever they do, they demonstrate that, I think. Discuss, or discuss with that. So,
See if Mario accepts the invitation. See how invested he is. All right. Anything else on that topic? But time hack here. I think as far as the SBC individual group task assignments, we have gone through that. I think shout out to the discussion. As far as any additional task assignments for right now, there are none. I think we're gearing up these teams and they're taking over that role. I'm looking broadly for our public, as far as public comment. So I will not be taking public comment. Scheduling up next meeting. If we do 2 weeks, we're going to be at, correct me if I'm wrong, the 18th, exactly.
2 weeks, 2 weeks to the 24th.
It's 24th, sorry. Oh, we got the 31st. This is why I should check my calendar. So my thinking is that we need to have. I don't know what the committee feels about that.
Not that I'm meeting, excited about doing tons of meetings, but I feel like we need a meeting that I can listen to and try and run.
All right.
I really do.
I think we need to touch base next week. Doesn't have to be a long meeting. I think I'll cap it in an hour max. Get team updates, focus on just coordination effort, focus on the presentation. And any updates with that, and maybe the schedule. Keep it fixed. Yeah, so 17.
Tomorrow morning when you wake up, it's already Wednesday.
I know, I'm already formulating the agenda for next week. It's the reality of our current situation. I think until we get to that meeting, it's imperative that we have.
So I have the 24th on my calendar, but I have the whole.
We said, yeah, now that we have a little bit, I think we should do the 17th, 24th. So able at this phase, we can pull back to our normal. So, ask for a motion to schedule the next meeting for August 17th, Tuesday, August 17th at 6 o'clock. The 6 o'clock, is a 6 o'clock work in person for everyone. 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. So moved. Jason, second. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. And then motion to adjourn at 8:06 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you, everyone.